Welcome, everybody. How are you? I am Kevin Iole. I am joined by my friend George Zapata of the Zapata Brand Podcast. We appreciate you joining us on this live stream. We will talk combat sports. We will talk MMA. We will talk boxing. We will talk pretty much anything about those two topics that you would care to talk. George, though, how are you, my friend? Your podcast is doing phenomenally well. Glad to see that. How you been?
Good. It's been a little bit though, Kevin. We haven't been able to get on. I mean, you've been busy. Your site, my site, just kind of.
That might be why you're going up. That might be why your traffic is up.
Yeah. Well, I'm new to this game. Kevin, you've been around for. You're in the Hall of Fame, for crying out loud. We're trying to push Coach Diz on a write-in ballot, but hopefully he gets his own time on the Hall of Fame.
Well, George, we have a lot to talk about. UFC 304 is Saturday in Manchester, England. Two title fights at the top of that card. We will talk about that. PFL playoffs open up on August 2nd. We'll have a little bit to say about that. There was a really interesting piece of news in MMA that came out. The Association of Boxing Commissions, which writes the rules in MMA, they approved 12-6 elbows. So that is going to change the way the fights are fought. John Jones's only loss came because of a 12-6 elbow, which was really ridiculous. So that, we can get into that and talk about what impact that has. Dana White confirmed today at the UFC 304 press conference that the winner of Saturday's bout between Aspinall and Blades will fight the winner, which is expected to be in November, between John Jones and Stipe Miocic. That fight is not made yet. We don't know if that is going to be in November, but all signs kind of point to that being there. From a boxing standpoint, we'll talk a little bit about Jake Paul, kind of look back at his Mike Perry fight, and we'll look ahead to maybe his fight with Mike Tyson. Riyadh season has a card on August 3rd, so we can talk about that. Terence Crawford headlining there, I know, against the guy that you like, Israil Madrimov. That's going to be a fun fight. Pitbull Cruz is on that card. I like Pitbull Cruz quite a bit. Andy Ruiz makes his return. It's been a while. Andy Ruiz out there. Jared Anderson stepping up. I think, George, that's going to be a big one. Jared Anderson stepping up. He's going to fight Martin Piccoli on that card. That is going to be a big one. And a couple other things that maybe we will touch on later. Shakur Stevenson is in free agency. Where will he wind up? And how is that process going to play out? And also something that really, really, really shocked me, Vasily Lomachenko saying no to Tank Davis. I don't know that it's fair. And I guess let's start right now with that and get your take on that very quickly. The talk had been, and Top Rank and PBC were in negotiations to make a November fight at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas for Vasily Lomachenko against Gervonta Tank Davis. All of a sudden, Egis Klimas, the manager of Lomachenko, comes out and says, I talked to Vasily, and he has decided to take 2024, the rest of 2024 off. So that puts an end to the talk about him in a fight with Tank Davis, at least for the time being, and probably forever. I'm shocked by that. How about you?
Oh, well, here's the thing, Kevin. We know the one thing that the knock on this was Lomachenko's getting older. Now he's going to step out of the ring even further now, and he's getting older. Was there a reason? Was this a political reason, or was this something he just was tired of? Because it's not like he looked beat up in his last fight. It wasn't like it was not like one of those jobs like an Errol Spence. With Errol Spence's fight getting moved back now. I don't know what the problem was there, because the hourglass is starting to get a little bit shorter for Lomachenko.
Lomachenko's 37 years old now. I mean, he dominated George Kambosos. It was a one-sided fight, which, anybody who knew those two fighters knew that that's the way that was going to play out. That, Lomachenko was 10 times the fighter that Kambosos was. I'm just trying to get my microphone here in a little bit better spot. But what I have heard, and I just see a question down here, so let's throw this question up. Dennis said, "Do you think he's hurt?" And from what I understand, he is not hurt. It is for personal reasons. Something in his family. Now, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong in the family, but he was planning to take some time off before he fought Kambosos. Got a chance to get a world championship against Kambosos, and so he took it. But he had been chasing Tank for so long. And even if this is all innocent and above board and he's not ducking, and that's what everybody thinks, right? He's ducking Tank. The timing of it looks bad. The negotiations start. Tank would never mention his name. He would never look in that direction. Now, finally, he says, "Yeah, I want to fight Lomachenko." And Lomachenko says, "Well, I'm taking the rest of the year off."
But does that mean the fight's over? That there's no way they can come back to the table?
Well, it doesn't mean the fight is over. But what it means is it's unlikely to happen, right? Because Tank is going to fight somebody in November. So, and here, let's throw this question on the screen because I think this kind of ties.
He's a big fan. I know David's a big fan of yours.
Once Shakur, he said once Shakur signs with the PBC, the fight with Tank Davis gets done. I don't know that he's going to sign with the PBC, but I think that the fight with Tank Davis is probably likely to happen, right? And so, if that happens. Now that I think that for a lot of reasons makes it less likely that Lomachenko would get the fight with Tank next year, right? I think Lomachenko has been considered. Well, maybe this isn't fair, but below Shakur, right? So it's like mainly because of age. So you go Shakur, then you step up. I mean, you go Loma and you step up and you fight Shakur. Now, all of a sudden, if you fight Shakur, is it a step down if you go and fight Loma, especially as, 6 or 9 months, how much older is Loma going to be then, right? So that becomes the issue as far as I see it.
Yeah, but has Shakur solidified himself as being the top guy? Think about it. His last 2 fights were stinkers. They were bad.
Awful.
So maybe him and Loma really isn't a step down. Maybe it's kind of even now.
Yeah.
So it's not really a step down for Tank. With Tank fighting, whoever he fights, that's their fight. That's going to be their go-to guy. There's no way that anyone in that division is going to say, "I want to fight someone other than Tank," and then drop out of it. So I don't know if Lomo's hurt. I would suspect he's hurt. I don't think there's
definitely not hurt. Definitely not hurt.
No.
It's a family.
Oh, really? Well, okay.
Not hurt. So that's gonna bear watching. I mean, I think that's one of those things that we have to see what comes out. From what I understand, it was his father's idea for him to sit out for a little bit of time. And when you get to be that age, it's probably not the worst idea to sit out. The problem is, and I think where the frustration of a lot of fans go, is a lot of fans look at Gervonta's record. And on the one hand, Gervonta has these really, really, really hardcore fans who, think he's the greatest and they push him. But he hasn't fought any of the A-list guys, right? So now, finally, after he fights Frank Martin, who is kind of in that realm, right? He's close. Then they want to. Then Loma says no, and that was where I think the frustration came. Now Tank's on the verge of having to fight somebody we know is an A-lister, we know is a world-class elite opponent, and then Loma turns it down, and that was the frustration with that.
Okay, so let's say that opens up the door for Shakur Stevenson, which would be the logical, the easier fight to make now at this point, I think, because he's a free agent. He could sign with who he wants to, and whether he signs with PBC or not, and they have to make that deal or not. Who do you see with that one? Because I know I lean towards Tank, although Tank may have an issue with the movement. I don't think I've ever gotten a direct pick from you as to who you feel.
Well, when Shakur turned pro, I said I thought Shakur had the ability to be pound for pound number 1 in the world. And I have stood on that. I had Shakur at one point as high as number 4 in the world. I dropped him down. I think my most recent rankings, George, go to keviniole.com and you'll find my pound for pound rankings under the boxing tab and pop those up on the screen for a second. I have a Sweet 17, and I think I have, if I'm not mistaken, I think I have Shakur number 10 right now. And so, I think he's going down. And at one point, if you would have asked me, I would have said 100% that Shakur's going to win that fight. That I think, Shakur, his boxing ability, his ability to dictate how the fights are fought is going to carry the day. Now, here's what I think is changing. There's audio out there. You can hear me asking Tank a question. I thought against Frank Martin that Tank really looked good, right? So there's and where do I have him? I had him at number 10. So I was correct. Yeah, I had him ranked at number 10. So, that I think that's a fair spot for him, given those two stinkers that he put in. But I asked Tank after he knocked out Frank Martin, I said, do you feel like you don't get credit enough for being a good boxer, right? Do you feel like you're not getting enough credit? Forget it. Everybody knows he can punch, but are you not getting enough credit for how good you are as a boxer and being able to set people up? And he took off and he gave a good answer on that. So I think that would be a fascinating fight because we know Tank is the bigger puncher. We know Shakur is the better boxer, but Tank is a pretty good boxer himself. And Shakur's not really that much of a puncher. So now, how do we go there? I think at this point, all along, I was leaning Shakur Stevenson. But I have to say, as I sit here right now, and I talk to you right now on this live chat, I think Tank Davis wins that fight.
I tend to agree. I don't know if Shakur's last two fights are indicative of how his career is going to go. Those two fights, I think the last fight especially, he had to make a statement and he didn't. Really looked bad. When Tank has to make a statement, Tank makes a statement. You know what I mean? Again, the equalizer, the punching power. Now, that doesn't mean Shakur's bad. I mean, believe me, that doesn't mean that he's bad.
Let's answer David's question. He's KOing Ryan Garcia means nothing. Whatever the record says, Garcia murked Haney. That meant nothing. Well, I think there is a number of points here, and I don't think, I'll speak for myself, but I think George would agree with this. We're not saying anything negative about Tank's win over Ryan Garcia. That of course was an impressive win, especially in light of Garcia's win over Devin Haney. But you got to consider the Devin Haney situation too, right? Okay, let's look at what went on, with Devin Haney. Haney makes the weight. Ryan Garcia doesn't even try to make the weight, right? Then we come to find out that he was on performance-enhancing drugs, which is a whole other issue. So that win over Devin Haney, I don't know. You can't really, because Ryan Garcia was artificially enhanced beyond what he normally is, right? And in that fight, and people who haven't had to cut weight, and of course I don't, and believe me, I need to cut weight, more than anybody. But believe me, I need to cut weight. But people who haven't cut weight tend not to understand how hard that is and what it takes out. And I have talked to so many fighters about this, and it's one thing, if you're getting to 140 pounds and you go from 165 and you get down to maybe 147 and you're okay. And then, it's hard to get from 147 to 143, but you can do it. But then getting from 143 to 140 is the absolute killer. And that's where you really sacrifice. And Devin Haney sacrificed. Devin Haney went in the sauna. He had the suit on. He went and ran. He did all those things, and he drained his body to make the weight. Ryan Garcia was with some girl in Central Park. That's what he was doing. He quit cutting weight and was out in Central Park and whatever the hell he was doing. And he did not make his body suffer. When you couple that with the performance enhancing drugs, I think it just diminishes the quality of the win. Not entirely, but I think it makes me think less of it than I would have thought otherwise.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. Cutting the weight is a bitch. That's happened to me a bunch of times, and I when I cut weight, but not that kind of. The last 3 pounds are usually the worst.
All right, let's see what else we got here.
Soki,
what is this?
Like Shakur.
Go ahead, George.
I said, I like Shakur, but his offense diversity is lacking. Same with Haney. Their opponents can see the shots coming, and I think that's why they don't have the high KO percentages. Agreed.
So what do you?
I
Okay,
agree
you
with that. Yeah, I mean, the Haney and Shakur, Shakur especially remind me of Pernell Whitaker. I'm not putting him on that level, but Pernell Whitaker, he's not someone I'm going home to watch fight. Tank, I'd go to watch fight. Ryan Garcia, I'd go watch fight. Shakur, as good as he is very good, as talented as they come. I'm a Jersey guy. He's a Jersey guy. I just wouldn't go put my money down to see him fight. He needs somebody to rub against. And then the same thing with Haney. Haney's been kind of absent. I think he's just kind of waiting for the Garcia fight to come back. But he's been absent for good reason too.
Well, I think like Shakur fights off the back foot. We know that, right? And he doesn't take risks. And so that becomes, they used to always say, like, there was a saying I heard from people when Floyd Mayweather was coming up. And this especially, I heard it a million times when he was getting ready to fight Diego Corrales. Now, think about this. When he was going to fight Diego Corrales, January of 2001, both of them were undefeated world champions. I think Corrales had the IBF belt. Mayweather had the WBC belt. Corrales was the big knockout puncher. Floyd was the boxer. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, Floyd's going to meet his match in this fight." But people would tell me in boxing, people that knew boxing, they would say Floyd fights best when he fights scared. And not that he was afraid of, who the guy in front of him, but he knew the guy could hurt him. So now he was more mentally engaged. And I think that's a little bit how at least I thought Shakur Stevenson was. But these last two fights make me wonder if Shakur Stevenson is that way. I always felt like Shakur was a guy, when he was engaged and he was on top of it, he could stand there in the pocket against Tank, throw his jab, maybe throw a right hand or a left hand behind it, and then get out of the way, and fight and kind of turn and move, but not really run, but, just kind of twist and turn, move his head, and create angles. I'm starting to think, maybe Shakur's gotten stale and not the same guy. It's I'm not sure what to think of him, but he's really disappointing me the last year or so.
Him and Tio, same thing. Last two fights, two just absolute stinkers. Absolute stinkers. You got a couple more coming in there, Kev.
Yeah, let's pop them up there. I think
all right.
Saw a couple good ones.
Of course, there's this one here.
Outside of Beterbiev, Davis has a 93% KO ratio that's better than top 10 pound-for-pound fighters. That includes Usyk, Inoue, Crawford, Canelo, Haney outweighed Garcia fight night by 4 pounds. It's not what they weigh on fight night.
Yeah,
it is what they do to their bodies when they're making weight that matters. And here, like, I am not dogging Tank Davis. Okay, I have criticized Tank Davis over the years. I am not dogging Tank Davis. But he has not fought A-list opponents. He has not been in guy. Vasily Lomachenko has done that. A lot of Teofimo Lopez has done that. Ryan Garcia has done that. Outside of Garcia and Garcia, he was coming off that, I don't know, his mental health break there. But Tank doesn't have those kind of guys. He has the second tier good. He had good fighters. I think Mario Barrios is a good fighter. Pitbull Cruz, I like, is a good fighder, but he fought
short notice for Pitbull though. In his defense,
and he fought older guys, Gamboa, guys that were kind of on the back end, right? So I mean, I think when we look at Tank Davis, take everything relative, right? And look at Usyk has done. Usyk is undisputed at cruiserweight, undisputed at heavyweight. He's fought all the best cruiserweights. He came up, he beats Anthony Joshua twice. He beats Tyson Fury. There's no way in this God's green earth that anybody who is anything other than Tank Davis's family can say that Tank Davis fought anywhere near the kind of competition that Alexander Usyk fought, right? So, I think that would be, my point there.
Okay, and this is Canada Chris. He's talking about boxing is no longer pure. In my opinion, weigh-ins have weaponized. Drug cheats often don't get caught. Short notice B-sides get at huge disadvantage, etc. I think he's right, but I think this is This is, I think, across the board in sports, more prominently in boxing, though, because there isn't much control there. There's not leagues and collective bargaining and stuff like that. You're kind of, this is the wild, wild west. We've known that for years. Wild west. So
yeah, there's a lot. I'm going to write about this coming up, right? But boxing has so many. Put that question back up so I can see it as I'm talking, right? There's so many crazy things that that happen in boxing, right? So one of the things is, if you fight for the PBC or you fight for Top Rank or you fight for Golden Boy, whoever, somebody else controls the title, not you, right? So you can move a fighter perfectly, get him into a top rank position. And then all of a sudden, the WBA orders a goofy mandatory. They make Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez. And that's a segue to a story I wrote today. If you want to go to kevineichel.com later, I mentioned that the WBA is talking about sanctioning Jake Paul versus Chavez for a belt. But seriously, George, that is an issue, right? They're moving their fighters. They're trying to position their fighters. And then these sanctioning bodies, Lord only knows what they're going to come up with these mandatories, right? And they go against fights that obviously the public wants to see. And, it's just a crazy thing. So I think that it's always been that way. The problem, I think, Chris, when you say it's not pure, there's more sanctioning body titles now, right? So back in the 40s, like when I think most people would say boxing was pure, although it was controlled by the mob, right? And there was a lot more fixed fights than there are now. But back in the day, when that was going on, there was only one world title. So you didn't have mandatory being ordered with a guy that was a 1,500 to 1 underdog, right? I mean, that is the crazy part of what goes on in boxing today. But as far as the weight stuff and everything, I couldn't agree more. In my Jake Paul column that I wrote today about the WBC president, one of the things I mentioned was, why do boxing people dislike Jake Paul? Well, he talks about he wants to beat Canelo Alvarez. He said last week after he beat Mike Perry that he wants to win, and he predicted, not that he wants to, that he predicted he'll win the cruiserweight title within 2 years. And I said, people dislike him because he was calling out Nico Ali Walsh before the fight. Nico Ali Walsh fought June 29th and weighed 157 pounds. Jake Paul had to strip naked on July 19th at his weigh-in to make 200 pounds. He claims that he came in at 212, but he looked like he was 230 at the least, and he looked like he was much bigger than Mike Perry, who's 30 pounds heavier than Nico Ali Walsh. And that's a point that Chris is making, and I think is a very good point to be made there.
I think there are two things. One, he brings a lot of money and he commands a lot of money. That's one. So I think people who are legitimately make this their livelihood are pissed about that. And they may have a right to, but they don't promote themselves enough like Jake Paul does. So that no knock to him. But he stacks the deck against you. If you're going to fight him, he stacks the deck. The thing I noticed when you talk about the weight issue, he blew up. He really blew up. And that raised a red flag to me. You can't blow up that much. There is something going on there, allegedly. But there's something there. Because you can't blow up that much of a weight if you're training at that. If you're training to fight at 190, so that was the contract weight, was it 200?
I think it was 200, yeah.
Okay. When's Mike Perry been 200?
Never.
Jake Paul, there's no way he was 212. He had to be in the 220s.
Yeah, he looked like he was 230, right? I've seen fights for a long time, and he's 6'2", big, broad shoulders. He looked big. And, hey, look, Mike Perry is not a boxer. And we knew going in that anybody who follows boxing carefully knew, I am not a Jake Paul hater because I think he's doing some good things. And then the one thing he's doing is he's surrounding himself with good people and he's training hard and he's trying to learn and he is getting better, right? But on the business side, he's like you say, he's a bully. He stacks it against you. And remember this. Remember when he was going to fight Hasim Rahman Jr. And I think this is very instructive, right? You have to understand this. I think that fight was scheduled for 205, if I remember correctly. And about a week out, Rahman said, "I'm not going to make 205." Okay.
Yeah.
Jake Paul immediately kicked him out of the fight. "You're not fighting." So he was upset that a guy would come in over 205, and he, it's bigger than me, and blah, 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 blah. And yet he doesn't mind fighting Nico Ali Walsh, who's 40 pounds less. Are you out of your mind? I mean, come on.
That's the biggest issue there. But when you see these fights that are put together like this, the good and bad, like why can't this happen? Why can't, and it seems to be, and I want to touch on that WBA. That's I want to touch on it in a minute, but why can't promoters put who they want to put into a fight? You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm the promoter, it's my business, right? Like UFC. If I'm putting in the money, I'm putting it up. Why wouldn't I want to get the best possible fight for my guy, even if it's like a rivalry or something like that? It has nothing to do with the rankings or whatever. Why can't I do that as a promoter without getting?
You can 100%. You can do that, but the problem is, right, that if most of your fighters that sign with you, they want to win a world title, so that means that you have to maneuver them up the rankings. So why do these goofy conventions take place, right? Well, they're lobbying fests, right? Oh. I've never been at one, but I know what they're like. So you go to the WBA convention, and it's always in some exotic locale, and they'll fly you in, and you get in there, and now you can go in there and you can lobby, and hey, I want my guy to move up in this class and fight, and you have that. So now if you're a promoter and you ignore that, and fighters then don't get positioned the way they want to get positioned, they're going to be upset with you as their promoter, and they want to go elsewhere. So, the promoters are forced to play the game. Now let's think about MMA, right? And both the UFC and the PFL and Bellator, PFL and Bellator are owned by the same person. But when you look at it in those three organizations, they own their own belts, right? And they control the belts. So now they don't have to worry. They can make a fight that they think is a fun fight, and they don't have to worry about the WBA coming in and saying, "I'm going to put this social media influencer against, this guy that's, a drug and alcohol rehab, and we're going to put them together." They don't have to worry about that, so they can make the better fights. But when you're in boxing, and what is the biggest thing in boxing, right? I got that belt right back there. That world title belt, that is what everybody strives to get. And we in the media and as fans, they diss the belt sometimes, but those fighters, that is what they grow up their whole life wanting to get, right? And then we say, hey, screw it. It doesn't mean anything, but you know what? That's what they want. And so you have to, the promoters aren't even in control of their own business. They have to play ball with these people who are not even regulated by the government, not even sanctioned in any way. They're the wild, wild west. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, and there was a couple points here, and I'll get to this till Chris from Canada's here. One thing, I know a guy to give you an idea what these conventions are like. I know a guy who's in this space. To go up there, he went on stage and to talk and promote this fighter to get him a higher ranking. That's kind of what happens here. To give you guys an idea, that's what happens. So the guy who's in this space doesn't fight, not a fighter, not a promoter, he's not even a manager, goes on there to talk to the heads of these organizations to rank them higher. Okay, makes zero sense. But Chris from Canada has a good point about Jake here. Jake's not a bad fighter, for considering where he's at. He's what is he, 12-1 or 10-1, something like 12-1?
10-1 with 7 knockouts.
Okay. As an amateur, I had this back and forth with a guy on my Instagram or Facebook, one of them. He was saying how Jake's terrible. He wouldn't last with a high-level open class fighter or an open class fighter. I said, he actually would be all right with an open class Golden Glove fighter. He'd actually be all right. He wouldn't get destroyed because, to be honest with you, the USA boxing system is nothing. There's nothing there. There is nothing there from 180 up. I know. I'm around. Well, Aubrey's a female and she's in the 120-pound division. But coming on, she'll be coming back in October. So he actually could do well. And I know someone who's seen him sparring with a couple of these fighters down there in Boca. And they said he did well as an amateur fighter. Yes.
Crawford said that. Like, here's the thing. Like, I talked to Chad Dawson, who was training him, no longer with him, but former light heavyweight champion Chad Dawson. Dawson, BJ Flores raved about him, right? Who used to be his lead trainer. Remember, if you are a pro boxer, when Terence Crawford was fighting his first 6 or 7 fights, he was fighting guys like this too. And while UFC fighters aren't boxers, they're good professional athletes and they're in elite condition. And he's beating these guys. That says something. Now, again, they are not boxers, but he has 12 fights of experience. 11 fights in pro boxing and 1 amateur fight, right? So I said that before. I give him credit for what he has done in boxing. I just think the business aspect, that's where it becomes bullshit, right? That's where it becomes when he's going out there and he's, putting, Nico Ali Walsh is the greatest example, but there's a million examples of it. And now he's fighting 58-year-old Mike Tyson. I mean,
maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
So that's his next spot. Whether the fight happens or not, I think everybody who knows, I would guess it probably does not happen, right? Barks Jam says he heard it's just for publicity. It's not for publicity, right? I mean, Tyson is not fooling around and training just to give publicity to Jake Paul. I mean, Tyson's going to make a couple of $1 million, and he loves doing this, but he's 58 years old. I wrote this in my column the other day. 4 years until he can get Social Security and 7 years until he can get Medicare, right? Mike Tyson can start collecting Social Security in 4 years. And so, in a presidential term, less than the presidential term, because it'll be before the next election that he was eligible at 62 years old, you can claim, right? And Jake Paul's fighting a 58-year-old guy, right? That's the crazy part of this. Now, what's really crazy to me is that there's people out there that think Mike Tyson can beat him.
Well, I get a lot. Believe me, I get that a lot, and I keep trying to tell them he was done 2 decades ago. 2 decades ago, and their one. I'll tell you what their one caveat is. Always, everybody, power is the last thing to go. I'm going to tell you. His power isn't there. Okay, and here's why. You don't have that momentum to push off anymore. You don't. And if you have injuries, if you've ever had an injury, my shoulder's totally torn. My quad's torn. I had a torn ACL. When you have that and then you start getting up in age, you're not throwing at it as fluid as you want because you're nervous about tearing it again.
Right.
He was done years ago, and these people argue with me saying, no. He hits him once. He's got to hit him. He's got to hit him flush. Absolutely.
George, I brought up his record, right? So I just want to pull this up. So let's go back for people who say what you just said. His last fight, forgetting the Roy Jones exhibition, his last regular fight, June 11th, 2005. So it's 19 years ago against Kevin McBride. Did Kevin McBride, who is no world-class guy, did Kevin McBride get knocked down? The answer is no. The fight before that, July 30th, 2004 versus Danny Williams. Mike got knocked out in the 4th round. Did Danny Williams go down? The answer is no. The fight before that was Clifford Etienne. Mike knocked him out in a minute. Clifford Etienne was so afraid in that fight. Then Lennox Lewis before that, Brian Nielsen the fight before that. I mean, Mike has not looked like Mike. I mean, I guess the ATM fight, you can say he looked like Mike. But that's almost 25 years ago, the ATM fight. So Mike, the power is not there. And I'm just not, I'm just saying that, anybody who thinks Mike is going to win this fight, I think it's just wishful thinking, George.
No, I agree. It's not it's 100% not going to happen here. I just don't. Well, winning the fight. As far as it coming off, I don't know.
I would say more likely than not that it'll come off, but not again. I am not going to sit here and say I will pay you money if the fight doesn't happen, right? I mean, I can see that fight, something happening to Mike, tears a back, and Mike's going to have to run, and you're 60 freaking years old, and you want to be out there running on the roads. I mean, come on. And he lives in Las Vegas. Like, is he running now? I guarantee he's not running now because the low temperatures are 94 degrees. I mean, we are in this record heat wave. I guarantee you Mike is not out there running the roads right now. And if he's not running and he's not doing road work, there's no way he's going to be able to compete in this fight. Now, I granted, we're still, 4 months out, but, Mike,
it's wishful thinking. Put it
let's
that way.
Let's answer JP's question here.
Right.
What are your dream boxing matches to end the year? I got one that's no doubter.
Okay.
Go ahead. I want to hear yours.
Oh, mine? I would like to see Canelo fight Benavidez or Canelo fight Crawford, one or the other, and then have Canelo, retire and go off into the sunset. Although he's going to fight Berlanga, I mean, I think maybe after that.
So he's fighting Berlanga on September 14th, which we should probably talk about a little bit because that is going to be it's a joke of a fight that Canelo took. And I have defended Canelo a lot, but I'm starting to wonder what the hell is going on with him. But he's going to be going up against the UFC card that night at the Sphere, which is going to be a really unique card. Now Canelo is strong. And his Mexican fan base is strong, and on Mexican Independence Day weekend, I think he's going to do good. But my God, fighting Edgar Berlanga. But I guess the answer, the fight. If I could pick any fight in boxing and put it together, ones that aren't made, right? Because we know Fury and Usyk are going to fight each other again. The fight that I would want to see would be Junto Nakatani moving up to 22 to fight Naoya Inoue. I mean, I think that is the fight that, Nakatani got a first round knockout the other day with a body shot. I've got him in my pound for pound top 10. I've got Naoya Inoue number 2, I believe, in my pound for pound top 10 or number 3. He is just incredible. And, Inoue could be number 1. I think Usyk, Crawford, and Inoue, are just very close. And any of them could be number 1. However, whatever order you want to throw them in. And generally, I don't put heavyweights up there. So that would be my fight, Junto Nakatani versus Naoya Inoue, if I can make it. And then I agree with your choice, too, of Crawford versus Canelo or Benavidez versus Canelo. Benavidez said the other day, though, that he is going to just concentrate on light heavyweight now, given the fact that Canelo's taken the fight with.
I don't buy that, though.
No.
No, here's what I think will happen. What they should have done is put Berlanga and Canelo in New York. Put it in New York instead of going head-to-head with UFC in Vegas, right? But I think that Canelo wants that Sphere fight. And I said it way back in the day that his last fight would be at the Sphere on Cinco de Mayo weekend against Benavidez. Perfect ending. Perfect ending. Little bow on top of your career.
Yeah. And so here's, Chris said sunset paydays are on Canelo's. Yeah. I mean, that could be, right? I mean, but Benavidez is such a big fight in his career. And what was Canelo about almost all his career? He was about fighting the best. When he was young, he fought Shane Mosley. He fought Floyd when he was 21. All that stuff that he did. And that was, just, I mean, it's crazy. Like what he's doing. I just don't understand it. I'm trying to think of the word to say that I want to use, but like Canelo always sought out challenges. He didn't have to fight Erislandy Lara or Austin Trout or a lot of those guys that he fought, and he willingly took on those challenges, and he always sought, the tough fights, right? He's always wanted to fight those guys. And now all of a sudden it's like, there's 2 really good fights in front of him. And on the one hand, he says, okay, I don't get any benefit from beating a smaller guy in Terence Crawford. And if you agree with that, okay, well, then there's the big guy in David Benavidez right in front of you, and you're not fighting him. It just makes no sense.
So he was searching for greatness at one point, is what you're trying to say. Now he's on the back end of his career. Is he still searching for that greatness that he knows he has cemented in? He has his legacy cemented. You know what I'm saying? So why take a risk? I don't. Maybe he doesn't want that risk anymore. Maybe the rewarding worth the risk. Put it that way.
Yeah. So
hey, who do you have in that Inoue Nakatani? Who do you favor?
I would favor Inoue in a way. I mean, I just think he is so good. But Nakatani is a terrific fighter. And you know what? There's been a lot of talk about the Saudis and the influence the Saudis have, right? The one thing that hasn't been talked about a lot in boxing is the little mini dynasty going on in Japan right now over there with all these great pound for pound fighters, under featherweight. I mean, there are a slew of great fighters over there at 126 and under. And they really, and I think if His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh wants to, keep all those big fights going, I think he's got to get Inoue and Nakatani. Nakatani just signed a deal yesterday with Top Rank, so he's going to be co-promoted by Top Rank. So I expect we'll see him back in Las Vegas. And so, that is going to be, that is going to be a fun thing to see. But I think, Inoue versus Nakatani would be an unbelievable fight. Let's throw this question up. I understand Canelo is a massive draw, but from a financial perspective, why share the pie with UFC on 9/14? Why not pick a different date and take the whole pie? I don't think, making the walk, I think that there's room for both of them here, right? Mexican Independence Day for the last 25 years has been a weekend that the biggest star in Mexico, Las Vegas and Top Rank were created a lot. I said thank you to somebody. I didn't realize they said thank you.
I put it up and it comes up both.
I said thank you, and then somebody's typing as me. But what was I saying? No, I even forgot where I was at.
UFC sharing the
Top Rank, and the MGM resorts. They kind of came up with this idea, and the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. They came up with this, same as they did in New York with Madison Square Garden and Puerto Rican Day Parade, of creating a fight holiday around that event. So the Puerto Ricans are big fight fans. So Madison Square Garden knows that they have the Puerto Rican Day Parade on a Sunday in June in New York. So they said, hey, let's put a fight card at the Garden on the night before. Let's have a big Puerto Rican star, Felix Trinidad, Miguel Cotto, Xander Zayas fought in the theater this year. And Top Rank did that, and Top Rank created that. Top Rank also created it in Las Vegas with Mexican Independence Day and Cinco de Mayo. It gave them big dates to have on the calendar, kind of like the boxing Super Bowls, right? So that fight, Canelo is going to do well. He's going to attract the Mexican fans. The Mexican-American fans are going to go over there. You're going to get MMA fans are going to come from all over the world to go to the Sphere, right? I think the main event of the Sphere card is going to be, and it's not done yet, and I could be wrong on this, but my guess is it's going to be Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili, and the co-main event being Alexa Grasso, who is Mexican, going up against Valentina Shevchenko. So the UFC doesn't have a Mexican fighter who has the cachet in MMA that Canelo Alvarez does, right? So I don't think that they're going to steal the Mexican fans away, right? The Mexican fans, I think, will watch, and you'll have 17,000, 18,000 at T-Mobile Arena watching that fight. But over at the Sphere, I think, you're going to have a huge crowd over there as well. And it's probably not a good night to be up and down the Strip because the traffic is going to be crazy in Las Vegas that night.
Well, how much does the Sphere hold?
Well, it holds 18,000 for a concert. Yeah,
really?
18,000. But I don't know what it's going to hold for UFC. I did not ask Dana that. Well, here, you know what? Let me text him while we are on the air here, and I will ask him what the Sphere is.
Tell him to jump on. Let's go.
All right, I'll tell him to jump on too, but he's probably not going to jump on. But but I will tell him. What the heck is that?
No idea.
That was Slapshot. We had the new shot come up. Sorry about that. Let's see.
What's going on here, Kevin?
So let's see here. While I text him, why don't you get another question up for us?
Yes, I got this. Sogi, he's a regular. Let's see what he says. Benavidez is huge for 168. If Canelo does eventually decide to fight him, he better put a rehydration clause in the contract. I don't know if Canelo would. I don't know if they would agree to that, but I mean, if they did, I mean, I don't know if they would ever agree to that.
All right. So I texted Dana. I invited him on, and I also asked him what the attendance will be. So we will see if he responds and gets back to us. Max won't be on the card.
At the Sphere?
Max Holloway. So there had been rumor, but that was more rumor that it was going to be Holloway and Ilia Topuria, but I don't believe that was ever accurate. And so I don't think Max and Ilia will be. I do think they are going to fight at some point. I just don't think it's going to be on that particular card.
Kevin, I had a question come through my DM from Instagram. A guy, Steve from Hopewell, New Jersey. Now that the 12-6 elbows are legal, would John Jones get his victory back from the disqualification?
No, the rules were what the rules were. And so they won't change, what the rules are. So, I think most of us who followed, I was there live covering that fight. And if I remember correctly too, I think there was even a question of whether it was a 12-6 elbow, right? I think, it got called a 12-6 elbow. And if it was, that was a foul. But I think, there was some thought that, it wasn't a 12-6 elbow. But in any event, the short answer to that question is no, he will not get the win back. So that's not going to happen. So what else do we have?
Get Uncle Dana on. Well, I don't think Uncle Dana's coming on. There was a couple.
Well, what do you mean? He hasn't seen the text yet, so I just texted him. But I see, since he has an iPhone, I can see when he saw it. So he hasn't seen it yet. So we'll see if Lord only knows what he's doing. They just ended the press conference there in England a little bit ago. So he might be at dinner right now. Would be my guess. He was on vacation in Italy, and then he flew from Italy into the UK. So one of my favorite questions there. Let me text.
You're flexing. Hey, listen, I've seen your contact list. Just give me that. What do you call it? Rolodex. Give me that contact Rolodex, buddy.
Yeah, I can't afford to lose this phone because I'm going to be in big trouble without the phone. But I never had. This is one fighter I never had his number in my phone, but I have his wife's number in my phone now, which is Muhammad Ali. And, I started covering boxing in 1979. I was still in college, and I had a full-time job at a small newspaper in Pittsburgh. And I used to cover cards at the Howard Johnson's that was locally back then. And I would cover those little small cards with fighters you never heard of, just local heroes and, fun stuff. Ali retired in 1980, so I never actually got to cover an Ali fight. So when I first met him, I was in awe because all around me here, I've got, Leroy Neiman's and all sorts of pictures and things, Ali, clearly my idol. And I got a signed glove back there by him and all sorts of stuff. And so, when I met him, it was really something. So then I finally got his wife's number about a year after he passed. I got contacted by somebody and said, Lonnie Ali would like to talk to you. They were trying to get a stamp for Muhammad and get him on a postage stamp. And that is a very involved process, believe it or not. And it takes a while for that to get done. And so, I ended up talking to Lonnie Ali. So that, so now I have her number in my phone. So that was something else.
Kevin, there was a question here that I want to see. CFI Media. I don't know what he's talking about, but maybe you can. It says Callum from CFI Media here producing the official biopic for Tommy the Duke Morrison. In 1995, when the world found out Tommy tested positive for HIV, how come you knew the results before Tommy? Is that true?
I did. It's not true because A, I didn't cover that fight that night, and B, that was broken by Steve Springer of the LA Times. So I wasn't at that fight that night. So Royce Fior, the late Royce Fior, who was my colleague at the time at the Las Vegas Review Journal, he actually covered that fight, not me. So I did not know that at all. So that's a goofy question. So anyways, let's see. What we got a couple other ones here.
Yep.
What's the deal with the Charlo twins? Nothing, and thank God of that.
Yeah. You talk about wasted talent. Andy Ruiz, who's on the card, the Riyadh card, which is a fantastic card coming up. That's a guy similar to like the Charlo twins. Where are they? They were hot and then they're cold now. Where the heck are the twins?
No, wait a minute. Now I got to answer Dana. So I asked him a question. So I'm going to read the question that I texted him because he just texted me back. I said, Dana, what will the Sphere hold for the Noche card? And we're live on YouTube. Do you want to jump in? So then he writes, 6.5 million gate for Manchester, 17,000, highest gate in arena history. So I asked him about the Noche card, and he writes that. So let me let's get a response here.
Say, hey, we're
he's typing again. So now we got the three dots on the screen.
All right.
Hopefully he's saying yes, I'm coming on.
That's
approximately 17,000 for the Sphere.
How many?
17,000.
I thought it would hold more than that.
So it's 18,000, a little over 18,000 for a concert. So the octagon is much bigger. Remember, the octagon is 30 feet around, and a ring is 20 by 20. So the octagon is bigger than the ring. And then, the way they have it set up, they have the two aisles coming down. There's a lot of space that's taken up. They have the big screens that they put up in all the corners that boxing doesn't do. And so they kill seats that way. So they're going to have.
What's the attraction to this? What's the attraction to the Sphere?
Ever seen the Sphere?
I've seen a basketball, like a basketball. That's it. I don't know.
We're getting more text on here. So should we keep staying with Dana here and the Dana 3-dot thing?
Yes. Keep it to Dana.
Okay. Well, he said tickets for the Sphere are on sale next week. We got breaking news. Tickets for the Sphere on sale next week on Wednesday. So they're straight Dana White. We have that. So
and join the stream. Say join the stream. George would like to ask a few questions.
So. Anyways, yeah. So I did ask him to join, so he sees it. Now he's seen it. So the fact that he's not here will tell you what he thinks of our stream, right?
Exactly.
So anyway, but yeah, no, the Sphere is going to be the most unusual venue ever. Like it's going to be an amazing venue ever, right? The sound at every seat is special because it's built as a concert hall, right? So you're going to have all that sound, and that's going to be screens inside, screens on the roof. I mean, it's going to be like nuts, right? So I think that it's not really set up as a sports venue. So that's just going to be the way it is. So
I'll be out next week. I'm going out next week. I went to the NBA. Oh no, it was NBA. No, I didn't go to that one. But it was NBA. Something was going on, and it looked like a big basketball. It was a summer league going on, so they shaped it like a basketball. So I didn't know what it was. I had no clue.
Yeah, so that U2 opened that, right? They had the U2 concert in there.
Oh,
it was $2 billion, right? To build that thing, a little over $2 billion. And it's got the most unique sound system in the world. And, it's just when you see it, it's phenomenal. One of the things that's funny, if there's a golf course across the street. So the Venetian Hotel and the Palazzo Hotel, we got another message coming in from Dana here. So he said, demand is like nothing we've ever seen before. Okay, so take that for what it's worth.
Boy, he's a promoter.
So you have the Palazzo and the Venetian here, and then behind it is the Sphere. Like the Sphere is about three-quarters of a block behind those two hotels. And then on the other corner, if you were going north on Las Vegas Boulevard, you have the Wynn Hotel, and behind it is a golf course. So there are shots from the golf course of the Sphere sitting there and people hitting at the water. And when they hit their ball in the water, the Sphere starts laughing. It puts a face up and it's
hilarious. Oh, that's pretty funny then. It's actually very interactive then.
Right.
So, that's pretty funny. Wow.
Now, the one thing I will tell you, this is an interesting thing that happened. the global outage we had last week, right? Whatever
Microsoft.
The CrowdStrike Microsoft thing. The Sphere is run by Windows, and they had CrowdStrike. So the blue screen of death was on the Sphere for several hours.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So when that thing went down, that's what happened, right? So anyways.
So Kevin, the Curtis Blades fight against Aspinall this weekend, is that 100% that guy moves to fight the winner of Stipe and John Jones? So
that's what Dana said at the press conference today. Now, Blades is the interim champion. It's kind of a weird thing, George, to me. Jones is the heavyweight champion. He hasn't fought since March. He wants to fight Stipe. Okay, I don't understand the fascination with fighting Stipe, but at one point, Stipe was considered the greatest heavyweight in MMA history, right? Maybe he still is. Consider that, but he's not. He hasn't fought since 2021. So he's getting a title fight, even though he lost his last fight, and he hasn't fought in 3 years. And Aspinall's been fighting and winning and looking great and doing it. I mean, I thought he would have been the guy. Excuse me, but that is the fight that they really want to go to, right? And but Dana said today that those two fight, those two fights, the winners are going to fight sometime in 2025 for the win. Now, I will say this: I will be surprised if it happens, because my expectation is twofold. Number one, I think John Jones will beat Stipe Miocic, and then I think after that fight, John Jones will retire. I don't think we will see John, fight anymore. And that brings us up to maybe why Laura Sanko's, Laura Sanko's.
Well, her tweet was here, or what she'd stated. She said, right there, John Jones is the greatest of all time, but Tom Aspinall is the best heavyweight in the world.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong statement, though.
I think that Aspinall, the problem, and I wrote a column yesterday about this, and I talked about, look at Aspinall has done in his career. And I think Aspinall, is a lot like Tank Davis, right? And that he wants to fight John Jones, and he's trying to get it, but his record is like Tank Davis, right? He hasn't fought that A-list guy yet. So he had two really good wins. He had the win over Pavlovich for the interim title, and he had the win over Volkov. He did fight Blades, but that fight went 15 seconds. But John Jones, when you just go down, John Jones, it is, his record is just impeccable, and I think that's. There is a question on here, and I'm going to answer the question. I don't want to put it up on the screen because it uses nasty language, but I'm going to answer it because, people are jerks, and I think that we should respond to this. Obiora Smith put up, and he said that I did something to Dana to cover slap. And, people, it's easy for people to say, who don't know what they're doing. And, but have I ever been paid by the UFC? No. Have I ever worked for the UFC? No. Have I ever done? No. I cover the sport, what I think should be happening. And I'm running an independent website. And if there are people who are going to read my story or watch it, because there are a lot of people who are interested in that. It's not my, slap is not my thing. It's not, I've talked to you about this. I don't think it's as bad as I first perceived it to be, and I got a kick out of a couple of the shows that I was at. And it's more of a video thing. So I'm writing less about it because what people don't want to read stories about it. They want to see the knockouts, right? I put one video up, a slap, and it has 1.7 million views, right? Well, if I can get 1.7 million views on my KevinIole.com, I would be a freaking moron not to take those views. And so a guy like this, who is he can just be social media troll. He can go out there, something like that. I want to address that because those people that say those kind of things, they can sit in their high horses and their throne, and they've never been in the position that we're in, and make your living on having traffic and having people come to your website every day. And now I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'm going to do it a little bit here. I got laid off on December 1st by Yahoo. January 22nd, I started a new website, keviniole.com, that I think is a pretty damn good website. And shout out to my the people that I hired at Boom Press in Pittsburgh, PA, for developing an unbelievable website. And I have upheld the utmost integrity of what I've done in terms of writing and how I have done things. And I have never taken anything, from anybody. And I write what I believe. You may disagree with what I write, but I write what I believe. And I thought when I created this website, I started with Power Slap. What's the bare knuckle fighting,
right?
And I did Power Slap as well as MMA and boxing, which I covered a long time. The bare knuckle fighting on my site didn't do very well. I quit covering it. The Power Slap has done better than that. It does better on video, on social media. And so that's why I did it. And this notion that somebody would do that, that just bothers me. And so I just wanted to say that and tell him to get lost.
The thing is this too. Also, you have to provide what the customer wants. You are now a small business, right? You're not getting your regular check every Friday for and cashing it and it clearing. You're not. So you have to go out and provide what the customer wants. If somebody wants a particular type of bagel that sells like crazy, but other people don't like it, I am making that bagel. Okay, that's just what it is. So yes, when I interviewed Elaine Viernes, tremendous guy. He's a powerful
super heavyweight champ.
It did a lot of traffic. I got a lot of subscribers from it. So somewhere out there, there's interest in it. That's not to mean everybody's got to like it. I'm not a huge Power Slap guy because I want to see how down the road people are. But Kevin, you've talked to the doctors, biased or not, you've talked to them. You're gonna find any doctor gonna say, "Oh, getting hit in the head isn't gonna be, isn't the greatest thing." But there is some documentation that this is safer than what people think out there. So it's not about that. It's about giving the customer what they want. And doing how you cover it. You have to cover what they want, or you're out of business. If I don't give my customer what they want, I'm out of business.
I have a choice. Like I could have said, "Hey, I'm going to cover MMA and boxing," and they have robust audiences, and I could have done that. But I looked at what was going on. What really got me to cover it, I'll tell this story that's kind of funny. Amy Kaplan writes for a site called Fansided Media, and I sit next to her at a lot of the cards up at Apex, right? And she had no TikTok account. Mm-hmm. She went to one of the shows. I wasn't at the show, and she went to one of the shows, and she took a video of a slap. She posted it, and the next 2 days, I think it had 1 million views.
Yeah.
TikTok. She went from no followers, just created a TikTok account. So I said to myself, I'm starting a new business. There's people talking about this. I talked to a lot of doctors and, whatnot. And I said, so I understood like no combat sport is safe, right? And I've talked about this a lot, and I've talked about this. I talk about this a lot. I've covered 7 fighters who died in boxing, and you want to talk about something that is traumatic. And I had one of them fall on me, right? And so, not a good thing.
Right.
So, but we don't hear people ripping boxing. Well, there's some people ripping boxing, but my man here who made this comment, ripping boxing was, ripping me for covering Power Slap was just off base, right? I said, hey, maybe I will get traffic on this and I can fund myself to go to UFC fights, to go to boxing matches around the world. And that's why I did it. So I don't want to spend any more time on that moron or that question, but I just wanted to explain that and go, what's going on here. So here's a couple more questions that came up and we should answer some of these. You still have some time for us, George?
Yeah. I'm good.
People are saying the Sphere card is just going to be a mid-level pay-per-view in terms of names on it. That would be sad. Well, I believe the top two fights, as I said earlier, are going to be O'Malley versus Valishvili, which is a headliner. O'Malley headline UFC 299 in Miami against Chito Vera. I don't think that was as big a fight as this would be, right? And then you're going to have Grasso versus Shevchenko. So I don't think that that makes it. And you're going to have Diego Lopes on that card. So I would disagree with that. I mean, is it going to be UFC 300? I think the beginning of the year, the UFC was really loading up some of those cards. They loaded up 299. They loaded up 300. 298 was pretty solid. And so I think some people are a little bit, I'm trying to think what the word is. They're saying it's a mid-level card. I think it's going to be a pretty good show, right? So, all right, let's get to another one. Your boy Sogi, thoughts on Paul versus Pereira? I'll let you answer that one first. I want to hear what you say.
Oh, I don't think that can happen. I think that's a smart move though by Jake Paul. Call someone out who's under contract to UFC. He can't move. He has. Hey, listen. He had him in the ring on FaceTime talking to him. That guy called him. Pereira called him. George Soros called him. Right? Not George Soros. Ed Soros.
I think what I'm guessing is because Nikisa Badarian is the head of Jake's Tribal Promotions. He used to be the CFO for the UFC, so he knew the manager. Ed Soros was a very prominent MMA manager. He manages Pereira. He used to manage Anderson Silva. So my guess is that Nikisa called Ed Soros, knowing what Jake was going to say, and then then he handed him the phone when they had Pereira on the phone, and that's what happened. I think
smart move.
Good, I think if the fight happened, Pereira would win, but it's not going to happen. So let's not spend time on it. So let's see, what do we got here? Are they hyping up the Sphere card too much to the point where when they finally announce the card, it's going to be disappointed compared to the hype? I think that's what what is just being was just being said in that previous question. I mean, it's hard to understand what motivates a fan base, because I hear some people defend certain fights that are like, oh my God, and then they're turned off by other ones that I'm pretty excited by. But I think you're going to have it's going to be 10 fights, so it's going to be a faster show. But I asked, there's a video that I did with Dana that is out there on my YouTube channel somewhere. It was earlier this year, maybe it was UFC 299. And I talked to him about, he kept making this comment about the Sphere is going to be the greatest card in history. And then he was saying UFC 300 was going to be the greatest card. And what the distinction he drew at the time, and I'm not going to directly quote him, I'm just going to try to sort of point to what he said. UFC 300, he was going to load up with as many elite fights as he could do. The Sphere was going to be the presentation more than the fight card, right? So it was going to be this crazy night of fights in this venue that is never going to host another, MMA event again. And that's what, kind of what he was talking about when he said that. So.
Yeah, that made sense. It was okay. 300 was a good show. It was a really good show.
Here we go here. Mismanagement of heavyweight in the UFC based on relying on inactive star power. I think Jones and Miocic retire. Tom takes the undisputed belt and eventually fights Pereira. I mean, I can't argue with that. I think that's probably a pretty good scenario that probably will happen. Yeah.
Well, why are you heavy on John Jones retiring?
I mean, that's the way he's been. That's what he's been saying. I mean, think about it. He's fought once. He fought Dominic Reyes February of 2020. And then he's fought once since then, right? So that's one fight in 4 years. We'll see if he fights Miocic in November. I mean, I hope he does. He's 38 or he's 37. He just turned 37. So by the time of his next fight, though, he'll be 38, right, or close to 38. And I don't think, and his legacy is so important to him, George, that I don't think he is going to be that motivated to keep going after he beats Stipe. I think he'll feel like, I clean out the light heavyweight division multiple times, and whoever the other go to the light heavyweight division is, there's nobody that can say Jones wasn't the greatest light heavyweight of all time. And now, even though at heavyweight he's not going to have a long run, I think when he feels like he beats Miocic, that'll be it.
You don't think he'd want to at least get the title?
What do you mean? He is the champion.
No, but Aspinall has he would be the interim champion, would he not? Doesn't Aspinall fight for the interim championship?
I mean, so what does that matter? I mean, I don't think who cares. He's the champion.
Unify it then. You just say, hey, he's the legit. No, you know what I'm saying? Like, go there, beat Aspinall, who they're claiming is the only guy left. Really, the only guy left that can give him anything.
Yeah, I think Jones feels like he's done that already. So I don't think that's.
And not that it's any of my business, but financially, I don't know if because there's not going to be many sponsors knocking on his door. I don't know. I see him fighting one more time, though. I do.
I don't, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Jones versus Ngannou never happens. No, and let's answer this question. Jones versus Ngannou never happens. That's a letdown. It is a letdown, but that was Francis's choice. And, the UFC wanted to make Jones versus Ngannou. And it came at a bad time because Ngannou's contract was up. And so when Jones finally came back, Ngannou's contract was expired, and Ngannou decided to go to the PFL. Now, I wrote at the time, it was a bad decision to go to the PFL because there were no opponents. Does anybody really think Ngannou Renan Ferreira fight is a big fight, right? Most people don't know who Renan Ferreira is, right? And then there's nobody else. Like, who else is there in the PFL? So Francis ended that by saying, I'm going to the PFL. Why? And think about it. Like, I am all for competition, and I want to see the PFL do good, because I think if we have a good PFL, a secondary league, whatever you want to call it, PFL, Bellator, that makes the sport better. It makes everybody better, right? It raises the stakes up. Competition makes everybody better. But why would the UFC? The UFC is up here. The UFC is worth $13 billion or more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they then go down? It's not like the PFL built up Francis Ngannou, right? UFC built up Francis Ngannou. So now Francis leaves, goes to the PFL. The PFL has done nothing with him. Now you're going to say we're going to have the UFC co-promote with the PFL when the UFC built both of the fighters. It doesn't make sense, right? Francis knew he could have signed. I think Francis could have signed a 2-fight deal and said, all right, I fight Jones, and if I win, or there's a rematch, right? We'll fight it, automatic rematch. If I lose, I'm done. And that would have been it. And so you don't think that was a good choice for him to leave? I think it was the best choice for Ngannou to leave. He made way more money. I think he hasn't because he hasn't fought.
But no, I'm saying he was able to box. The UFC wasn't going to let him box.
Boxing is a different story, but we're talking about MMA. So if you talk to him on boxing, okay. Yes, I agree with that. Okay. From a boxing standpoint, I'm not disagreeing, but I'm saying from an MMA standpoint, which is what the thrust of this question is, right? That was, but that goes into part of what I said before, that Ngannou's free agency came at a bad time for fans who wanted to see Jones and Ngannou, because Jones was out, wasn't ready to fight. So then Jones finally said, hey, I'm ready to fight now. And Ngannou's free agency, hit, right? And that they collided. If Jones had been back 6 months earlier, the fight would have probably happened, right? But that, that kind of was it, sort of what. Let's get a couple more questions. Yep. So, anyways, let's see here. Let's get another one. I'm trying to get something. I'm just here to glaze. Okay, well, thank you, Cam. I thought let's see, what do we got here? Coming in and I feel like waste. Well, I mean, again, so Cam, let's think about this. I don't know that they're going to do that, right? We'll see what they do. That's the November show. We don't even have the September shows made, and we're worrying about November now. But let's just take that. The conversation we just had, people saying that, the Sphere is a mid-level card, the O'Malley and Dvalishvili and Grass and Shevchenko is not an entertaining card. And yet then on the other hand, we have somebody saying, Well, if they load it up and they have Pereira versus Ankalaev and Jones versus Miocic, it's too much of a card, right? And we're wasting fights. I mean, I think they're in a spot where it's matchmaking. When you're matchmaking fights, it's always hard to please everybody. So you try to please the most people and give the best fights that you can give on a particular day. And I think that's George, that's what they're trying to do. At that point there. So, anyways, let's see, what do we got here? We got a couple of them going in here. Let's see, JJ versus Aspinall is a big fight for purists. Casuals who Dana aims for won't care about that fight financially. So financially, it'd be a massive benefit if JJ wins, so it really boosts his resume. Well, let me answer that question, because you're right about the first part. It's a big fight for MMA purists, and casuals won't care. All big pay-per-views, every one of them in boxing and MMA, are driven by what some people, and I don't like the word casuals, but would call casuals, right? The hardcore fan base in both sports is really small. It's bigger in MMA than it is in boxing, but it's really small in both of them, right? The hardcore fan. And so if you were just selling to the hardcore fan base, you would go out of business, right? It's the casuals who say, "Oh, Floyd Mayweather's fighting, I want to buy the pay-per-view," or "John Jones is fighting, I want to see John Jones," and they don't care, they don't care about Merab versus Sean O'Malley, right? Like we care about Merab versus Sean O'Malley. They just care about the really big names and the big events. So that is there. So now the question becomes, okay, if John wins, does it boost his resume? I think it does boost his resume, because we're saying right now that John Jones is the greatest light heavyweight of all time, and he's the greatest fighter of all time. But if John Jones beats Tom Aspinall, that will assume then he's beaten Stipe Miocic and Tom Aspinall. He will be the greatest heavyweight too. And then there's no question about him, right? And then we're in that position. So it looks like my man George is gone for a walk. So we'll see if we get George back here. But in the meantime, I will just switch. When George comes back, we will bring him back in here. Let me just go to a couple other ones before we get out of here. Let's see. Didn't Francis want the same consideration like Conor, fighting out of the UFC like a boxer in Fury? Yeah, the answer is yes, but he hadn't earned it. Conor McGregor was selling 1 million pay-per-views. Francis in the UFC, I think his biggest pay-per-view was like 300,000 or something like that. So Conor, fight after fight after fight after fight, was huge. And Francis didn't do that. And then they also knew Mayweather versus McGregor was going to be a huge fight, which Francis versus Fury did terrible on pay-per-view. Now, it was in Saudi Arabia. I think if it was in the U.S., it would have done a lot better, right? But, so anyways, that's that. So anyways.
I am back, Kev. Hold on 1 second here.
All right.
I'm going to put this, the mic is going to be, hold on 1 second.
How did I meet Billy Walters? Billy Walters is, for people who don't know, is like the most successful gambler of all time, the biggest gambler of all time. When I was working for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, in addition to covering combat sports, I covered two other things. I covered golf, and I covered sports betting. And Billy Walters owned a string of golf courses, and he was the world's biggest sports bettor. So that is how I met Billy Walters. And Billy is a good guy and gives a lot of money to charity. So let's see here. Can Munguia help ESPN's ratings, having lost to Canelo? So I think El Cuerpo. What's a little bit lost here is that Golden Boy, as Top Rank will be, is the secondary promoter. Zanfer Promotions in Mexico was Munguia's lead promoter and will remain Munguia's lead promoter even with Top Rank involved. And it's going to be a co-promotional situation. Zanfer doesn't have any TV distribution in the U.S., So as a result, they used Golden Boy before to get Munguia on DAZN, and now they're using Top Rank to get him on ESPN. And will he help the ratings? I just think, he's a fun, entertaining fighter. If you put him in fights against people who fight that way, yes, he will be. So I guess it's, the answer to that question is it depends.
Kevin, am I back on?
You're on. Where were you?
It just, the mic went off, and the next, the screen went black. So what the heck just happened? So yeah, I'm back in.
All right. Well, you're in. So, anyways, well, let's end it. We'll answer this question, and we'll end it on this. With so many frequent cancellation of UFC fights, what's the solution? Letdown of Lopes for Ortega. The solution to that is that's why Apex exists, right? They had so many fights. Remember, what year was that? Was it 2013 or 2014? It was unbelievable how bad it was. They were having guys get injured.
I remember that.
And they realized that guys were training improperly. They weren't, the nutrition was bad. And so they built the Performance Institute as a result to try to help fill that void. And it's gone down. But we're in a combat sport, and they are going every single week. And that's, what does the UFC have? 44, 45 shows a year? And I think that's why, it's so noticeable, because they have every single week they're going and they have people in. But it's the precedence of it is a lot less than it was before. So,
yeah.
What do you think, George? Have we done it?
No, I mean, geez, I don't. That's good.
You're dropping off. My voice is still holding. I should do a commercial. Gold Peak, if you're watching, I drink more of this Gold Peak than anybody alive. Anybody, I guarantee you. So why is Gold Peak? I think all of you people should write to Gold Peak and tell them they should have a sponsorship on KevinIole.com. And we'll even make it specific. Gold Peak Sweet Tea. Why is it not on there? I'm going to tell them, even if Turkey Al-Ashi comes in and says he's going to give me a sponsorship, no, we are going to take the money from Gold Peak, because I drink more Gold Peak than anybody alive. And that is my new goal. Forget the Sprite, which I never drank. The Iron Sheik knows that. Gold Peak, I need a sponsorship, right, George?
Yeah, I believe me. I'm pushing it. I'm pushing it for you, buddy. Anything you can get. We got two more questions here. Cam Newton.
Oh, I thought we were done.
Well, just do Cam Newton here. My favorite non-com champion fight is Corey Sandhagen versus Umar. Who do you think will win? And is this a guaranteed eliminator, title eliminator?
Dana said to me, we'll see. So that means it's not a guaranteed eliminator. When I asked him that question, he loves Umar. I think it's a 50-50 fight. If I had a bet, I would lean toward Umar in the fight. Umar wasn't as impressive a fight ago, but I think Umar's got such a good all-around game that I like him.
And this one we didn't hit on. Let's make this our last one. Coach Diz coming in here. Why is UFC so big on Paddy Pennington? I'm not. I think the way he moves up in weight when he is out of training will catch up to him. That was a fight that I actually was thinking about against King Green.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous fight. I think it's a dangerous fight for Paddy.
I like King Green to win that fight.
Oh, do you really?
I do. I like,
too.
King Green, really good hands, really good striker. They're coming off a win over Jim Miller, who has at least as good a submissions as Paddy has. Mm-hmm. And, that would be the one thing you'd worry about is Paddy's submission game against King Green. But I think King Green is dynamic, explosive. His confidence is up. King Green sometimes is up and down. You see him really up here, and then you see him, the man formerly known as Bobby Green, used to be incredible. But that's kind of where, what I would say, right. So I think Bobby is there. But why is Paddy big, Dennis? Because the English fans love him, and he's a talker. And, they love Michael Bisping for that reason. They love, Conor McGregor's Irish, but, from that region of the world, they love those kind of fighters, the shit talkers who come to fight. And I think that's what we have. So anyways, I was a shit talker for almost 90 minutes here.
You got into it.
Listen, you got to listen to the Zapata blah, blah, blah. The Zapata Brand Podcast. You got to check that out. George does a great job, especially on Sunday when he has Coach Diz on, because that's when it is at its best. Coach Diz is the man. As Hall of Fame
Boxing and Bagels on Sundays.
As Hall of Famer Fred Storberg would tell you, he is the man. Check out KevinIole.com. I would appreciate you guys checking that out. It mean a lot to me if you would do that.
Make sure you like and subscribe. Like and subscribe to the channels.
Both channels, my channel and his channel.
Yeah, do that now. We're going to try to make this a little bit more regular, Kev. I think we should try to.
Yeah, I think especially it'll be brought to us by Gold Peak Iced Tea.
Gold Peak Iced Tea. We got to reach out to them. Where the hell are they?
See you, everybody. Thanks.
All right. Take care, Kev.